What the hell is going on? What a goddamn clown show. Okay, I'm done. I'm officially placing Trump in the unique position that I've only placed one other global leader on, the Vladimir Putin insanity position. Okay, that's it. Officially, I'm done looking for reason behind his actions. Now we're going to talk about
We're going to begin with
President Trump addressing Congress as new tariffs take effect on Mexico, Canada, and China.
Also, the hefty new tariffs on imported goods from Canada, Mexico, and China. And this morning, by the way, China has said it will retaliate, and Canada also already hitting back. And that is just one of many moves this White House has made to expand the power of the executive branch. So much has happened, really, that even folks here in Washington, D.C. struggle at times to process it all. But that's why we have Nancy Cordes, our chief White House correspondent, to stay on top of everything. Nancy, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. I have had my struggles, but today is a day that the president will be front and center. And you know that this is a president who cares a lot about the stock market, but yet...
Yeah, no, he cares so much. That's why he's destroying it. That's my king. That's J.D. Pondam, baby. That's my goat right there. He said, the Treatlerites must suffer. Permanent first. He said, hold on, let me put this on. J.D. Pondam said, permanent first world genocide. The Treatlerites in the suburbs will scream bloody murder. I will take away their treats. Have fun. Enjoy the treats while you can. You will never enjoy them again. The Chinese century of prosperity is upon us. I will make our allies scream, and in the process, I will cripple the America economy. It's Trumponomics.
Yesterday, after he announced that there was no way...
Last night, I realized I was a Treatlerite when I took out a Trader Joe's lasagna and it said product of Canada, and I realized it would go up 25% time next time I buy it. That's right. Trader Joe's lasagna from Canada, which is a settler colonial entity in and of itself under the banner of the Commonwealth, still holding up loyalty to the British Empire. Canada will also suffer.
Out for Canada and Mexico, the Dow fell 650 points. Still, 25% tariffs on their goods went into effect overnight with President...
He said, the labor aristocracy. I love doing JD Pondon. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop. I'm going to dial it back a little bit.
Trump calling it a punishment, though it's unclear in the case of Canada in particular what that punishment exactly is for.
No room left for Mexico or for Canada.
President Trump is calling today's tariffs a powerful weapon, a weapon that will now be wielded on food, lumber, electronics, cars, anything that comes into the U.S.
so I can
from
say
Canada and Mexico.
It's a very powerful weapon that politicians haven't used because they were either dishonest, stupid, or paid off in some other form. And now we're using them.
The move could wound American consumers, too, as producers pass along that new 25% tax, driving up the cost of a small car.
I still genuinely do not understand what, Trump's internal purpose for this is. I don't know. I've said this already. I've tried to make sense of this. I've talked about how maybe it's because he wants to, bully key sectors into submission. But having said that, this is across the board tariffs. So it's not even divided evenly by sector. It just does not make sense. It truly feels like he is trying to, it truly feels like he is just trying to break everything. This, US aid, I understand a little bit more, right? He's not doing it because he's not undermining and crippling US aid because he is trying to eradicate American soft power at the global stage. He's doing it because he personally thinks US aid is just libtard. Right? He thinks USAID and all the NGOs and civil society organizations that it funds is a money sink for numerous Democratic Party goals and organizations. There's some truth to that. However, it plays a broader role in doing the bidding of American empire at the end of the day. Trump might not have the foresight to recognize that, right? He might not have the foresight to recognize that. He might be more interested in changing the approach that America has had in terms of focusing on soft power initiatives and hyper-focusing exclusively and entirely on permanent war. Not to be a hater, but why do you think Trump unilaterally decides any of this? I mean, I think when I say Trump, I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about like his advisors as well. I'm not simply referencing Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump operates on his own, obviously. I guess the other point for the tariffs is that it's a regressive tax, and he will use the additional money that they get from tariffs as a way to say, we filled up the government coffers, now it's time to cut the only progressive tax that exists, which is income tax. And even then, there's a million different loopholes. I mean, we've talked about all of this stuff already, but it still does not make a whole lot of sense.
By an estimated $6,200, or an SUV by $9,000. So many car components are built across the border.
Because of the arbitrary nature of the emergency use of tariffs that are being done, we don't know how long they're going to be in effect. At the end of the day, there is little doubt that consumers will feel the pain of this, but it will also impact consumer demand as well.
Economic uncertainty already pushed consumer confidence down in February.
This will help Tesla, right? No, it won't. No, it will help zero car manufacturers, because even the cars that are manufactured in the United States of America, because of previous trade agreements, whether it be NAFTA or, ironically enough, the trade agreement that Donald Trump did, NAFTA 2, right, has created this network of back and forth between Canada and Mexico, where they pass the American border into Mexico, pass the border into Canada, and vice versa, a million times until the car is assembled in the United States of America. That actually ends up, yes, USMCA is what I'm talking about. That actually ends up greatly increasing the cost of the car if they have to pay for all of the different parts that are being manufactured in Mexico or Canada before it makes its way into the United States of America, when every single car manufacturer is paying an entry fee numerous times over. Yes, United States, Mexico, Canada agreement, which was signed on July 1st, 2020, okay, drafted in the 30th of September 2018, is an agreement that Donald Trump put forth, which was a substitution for NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, which Donald Trump was very much against. But then he basically did the exact same thing. For the people who still don't understand how tariffs work, it is an entry fee that Americans pay for, okay? American importers pay for, just so you understand. It's not paid by the Mexican government, and it's not paid by the Canadian government. The negative consequences for trade for the Canadian or the Mexican side will obviously be that people will look for domestic manufacturers instead, or they will go to other foreign nations that provide the same exact resources, same exact materials, or same exact parts at a cheaper price, because now they don't have an additional 25% that they have to pay at the point of bringing it into the United States of America. So it will lower trade, and it will restrict. I mean, it has the capacity to restrict trade. That is why it's often used. I am not anti-tariff across the board. I've said this many times over. I'm not, I'm not against trade protectionist. I'm not against trade protectionism across the board. I do think that there needs to be, obviously, a competitive manufacturing industry. And the irony here is that for many of the things that, if you're doing, across the board tariffs, there is no competitive domestic manufacturing on some of the raw materials, for example, that you need. Like, what are you going to do if it just doesn't exist here?
A new CBS News poll, just 24% of Americans say the economy is getting better.
This is bad, because normally it's the 30% that are like the Trump loyalists that will always say, no, it's getting better. It's so sick now. I love the economy. And even that number has like diminished. He's sub 30 in his super base. Okay. That's not good.
49% said it's getting worse. But President Trump says the tariffs are needed to punish Mexico and Canada for allowing migrants and the deadly drug fentanyl into the U.S.
Less than 1% of all fentanyl that comes into the U.S. is apprehended at the Canadian border. So why use fentanyl as a reason?
They're only apprehending 1%. You're right about that. It's a little more than that. But they should be apprehending much more, because a lot comes through Canada.
Again, all the data that we have indicates that that is simply not the case. But what does come in through Canada is about a third of the softwood lumber that this nation uses, which has led analysts to predict that home building prices will be going up. President Trump says that if companies don't like these new tariffs, they can simply move production to the United States. But Tony, when it comes to things like
what are you going to do? What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, okay, you don't like the tariffs? It's time to destroy our our forests? Is that what it is? Oh, you don't like the tariffs? Okay, well, sorry. Time to destroy American forests. Canada just has a lot of trees, man. They have a lot of allocation for this. What are you supposed to do? I mean, we got forests too. Don't misunderstand me. We got forests out here. It's just that, like, I guess he just wants to destroy the remainder of the American forests. They announced it yesterday, going to clear 280 million acres of national forest trees. Jesus Christ, dude. I mean, I suspect that it'll be much easier to do these sorts of things when you can't do an impact study because you fired every researcher and you think impact studies are woke and gay. I wonder what the long-term consequences will look like when you're just gutting the remainder of the American forests now. Oh, great. I love having people control the wheel that have no interest in being even remotely reasonable. Just doing absolute death and destruction. Great stuff. You can't ramp up production that quickly. There's also that side of it too, but I'm not even going to get into that. There's also obviously the fact that you can't just like materialize out of nowhere all of these businesses that seemingly did not exist. You know, you just can't do that.
Hey, good morning, Robin. Well, the short answer here is that a lot of products that we buy day to day could get more expensive. Groceries, gas, shoes, clothes, electronics. Mexico, Canada, and China, they accounted for almost half of all of the goods that were shipped into the U.S. last year. Okay, so if these tariffs stay in place, economists expect you could start to see price hikes by Memorial Day. For groceries, it could be within weeks or even days, Robin. So take fresh produce, for example. About 63% of U.S. vegetable imports come from Mexico. Think bell peppers, cucumbers, strawberries, tomatoes, limes, avocados, a lot of that fresh produce. And grocers, they can't really stockpile those foods in advance. So if they decide to pass down the entire 25% tariff, that means your $3 avocado could end up costing $3.75 pretty quickly. Liquor, like tequila and Canadian whiskey, could also get more expensive. And then the auto sector, really another big one at risk here. Automakers rely on thousands of different car parts that are traded between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. If they are paying more to get those parts, you could end up paying $3,000 more for a new car. And some of the dealers that we've talked to say that they might raise those prices within months, Robin.
And many are wondering about gas prices, Elizabeth. Could they go up too?
They could. So about 60% of the crude oil that the U.S. imports comes from Canada. Our refineries are actually uniquely built to process Canadian oil. The national average right now for a gallon of gas about $3. Gas Buddy expects that the tariffs mean prices could go up by 15 cents a gallon in the Midwest.
That's right. My goat, he's doing it. He's fixing the cost of living crisis by making it so expensive that you just die. It's so sick. He's doing it, man. This goes back to the thing that I was talking about initially, the resentment and the jealousy that I have, the envy that I have for Trump getting to do whatever he wants and his fan base just eating it up like it's the most brilliant thing that's ever happened. He's doing it again. He could just be like, yep, that's right. You're going to suffer, but it's okay because you deserve to suffer. We are going to deindustrialize the United States of America. The labor aristocracy will suffer the largest penalties for the American empire's cruelty. Endless bounty. Unequal exchange is over, folks. Okay, I love that for months I said, and many other people who understand what's going on said over and over again that this is going to tank the American economy, that this is going to make everything insanely expensive. We said this over and over again. And for some weird reason, no one on the conservative side ever took this seriously. Like, I don't get it. Let's listen to Maria Bartiromo crashing out at a auto dealership guy freaking out about these tariffs.
Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram.
Yeah.
Impact.
Dramatic. I sold order for a customer. $80,000 truck. It's $100,000 now. So he's not going to buy the truck. It's going to sit on my lot. at the higher interest rates we're paying right now for floor plan, and nobody's going to buy the truck because it just had a $20,000 price increase.
Right. Kelley Blue Book will put the number up. They say the average vehicle will go up by about $3,000. Does it sound right to you?
No, it will not. We don't have the broad stroke. We don't have the linear, the tight strokes.
I just wanted to make my camera smaller so you can see the Dow futures on the ticker in the corner there. Like while all of this is happening, the stock market's taking a nosedive, which is also weird. He said he was going to do it. This is the other thing that I don't understand. Why is the stock market responding to this now? He's been saying he's going to do this for months at this point. I just do not understand. Stocks mostly rebound. I know, but like, I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm too stupid, I guess. I'm too stupid to understand the high IQ games that people are playing on the stock market.
But think about it. We built our business around that. The OEMs built their business around that. And now it changes on a dime. And we can't build a $4 billion plant overnight in the United States. So I think building in the United States is great. I think enhancing the participation from the other countries on the other things. But this is pretty radical.
I hear you. There you go, Maria, where the rubber meets the road here.
All right, great. Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, exactly. Jeff, thank you. Thank you so much. Jeff Flock at the Dodge Ram plant. Not plant. It's not a plant, Chris. They're selling cars. Thank you, dealership. But you know what? Let me ask you this, okay?
Yes.
How many Dodge Rams do you see driving around Europe? Okay.
I once again am asking Amerifat morons why they do not make cars that are appropriate for the European market and then sit there and demand that they drive these behemoth tanks on roads that cannot sustain them. Make better cars. It's so stupid. Make smaller, fuel-efficient cars with smaller engines. That's it. Abide by EU standards and regulations. The Chinese car manufacturers never turned around and were like, no, you're going to drive our version of these vehicles. We don't care. They looked at the market and they were like, okay, we'll make these incredibly competitive and very cheap electric vehicles, and we will flood your market, and they will be impossible to compete with on a price point because we're heavily subsidizing it. That's it. It's not like they were sitting around being like, no, we want to make tanks. Why won't the dumb Europeans purchase our tanks? The cars that we make here in the United States of America are ginormous. It's so frustrating. Where they're like, why won't they buy our tanks? Why won't they do that? They made the calculation that the American cultural exports will eventually lead Europeans to want street tanks, and to some extent it's working. I see way too many Ram 1500s on the road here in Austria? Wait, really? I thought you meant Australia. I was about to say, well, they have a Ute culture over there, but Austria? That's crazy. I hate that the one good thing about the European Union is walkable cities and a walkable infrastructure and public transit. And that is partially because, you know, they did that before the American brain rot set in. Okay, they did that. And now we're just like going to force their hands and be like, nah, dude. You have to have these tanks. You have to literally rebuild your cities, destroy the public transit so that you can have Ford F-150 pickup trucks driving around. You have to literally destroy what remains of like the parks and whatnot so you can create these ginormous parking lot structures.
So today, the United States launched a trade war against Canada, their closest partner and ally, their closest friend. At the same time, they're talking about working positively with Russia, appeasing Vladimir Putin, a lying, murderous dictator. Make that make sense. Canadians are reasonable, and we are polite, but we will not back down from a fight. Not when our country and the well-being of everyone in it is at stake. At the moment, the U.S. tariffs came into effect in the early hours of this morning, and so did the Canadian response.
Boom.
Canada will be implementing.
Yeah, enjoy not having maple syrup, you American dummies. I'm kidding. Obviously, there's so much more than just maple syrup. Let's be real, but
25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods, starting with tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods immediately, and tariffs on the remaining $125 billion of American products in 21 days' time. Just like I did a month ago, I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. Now, the legal pretext your government is using to bring in these tariffs is that Canada is apparently unwilling to help in the fight against illegal fentanyl. Well, that is totally false. Let's look at the facts. Our border is already safe and secure. Far less than 1% of fentanyl flows and less than 1% of illegal crossings into the United States.
I think one of the funniest aspects of this is like Trudeau is like subtly trying to throw Mexico under the bus here and also fact checking Trump. But what's hilarious about it is that Claudia Sheinbaum did her version of this as well, which is that Claudia Sheinbaum said the objective reality, which is that fentanyl is trafficked into the United States by American nationals for the American public consumer. Okay? That's it. It's the truth. American citizens are the ones who are trafficking the fentanyl into the United States of America for the consumption of other American citizens. And in the process, those American citizens also defend the cartel's interests by giving them endless amounts of weapons. We are a belligerent state that is ruining the lives of, actively ruining the lives of countries that unfortunately are near our national boundaries. But God forbid we take ownership over any of that. No, it must be the Guatemalan abuelas, you know?
Now I want to speak directly to one specific American, Donald. In the over 8 years you and I have worked together, we've done big things. We signed a historic deal that has created record jobs and growth in both of our countries. We've done big things together on the world stage, as Canada and the US have done together for decades, for generations. And now we should be working together to ensure even greater prosperity for North Americans in a very uncertain and challenging world. Now, it's not in my habit to agree with the Wall Street Journal, but Donald.
Because he's woke. Because he's woke and he is Fidel Castro's next of kin. That's why. Because Justin Trudeau is a communist.
They point out that even though you're a very smart guy, this is a very dumb thing to do.
Yeah, look, the thing is, I will say this much, okay? Part of the reason why I'm not anti-tariff across the board is because I do think that it has the capacity to beef up domestic manufacturing, okay? If done correctly. If it's managed through unions like the UAW, for example, and they play a big role in how manufacturing can be increased, for example. I just don't trust the Donald Trump administration to actually actively give a seat at the table to the UAW, though. I think it could be done correctly. It just can't be blanket tariffs across the board for each individual nation. What he's doing here is basically breaking the toys that America benefited from for years and years and years. That's all he's doing. Trade negotiations that he actually renegotiated. USMCA is the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement is literally NAFTA 2. Donald Trump implemented that. So when he turns around and he's like, yeah, I don't want it no more. What I find very strange about these decisions is that these are negotiations and agreements that benefited America and the American consumers, often at the cost of American manufacturing. Clawing that back and reshaping American priorities and reshaping American manufacturing in this way is not necessarily a bad thing in the long term if done correctly. But of course, as is the case with Donald Trump, he's not doing it correctly. I don't think that he's doing it for a good reason. I don't think he's doing it to improve American manufacturing. But to be fair, I also don't know what he is trying to do anyway, because so much of the Trump administration is just genuine insanity. Yeah, we'd have to do China level central planning to actually reindustrialize. Just doing blanket tariffs makes no sense. I know. How do you think he's going to get out of it? I don't even know what the hell he's doing. I've just never seen a right-wing administration behave like this. Yanis Varoufakis, former Greek finance minister, friend of the show, one of my favorite bald men, is on Rana Khalek's Dispatches on BT, Breakthrough News, talking about what possibly could be the reason for why Trump is doing all of the things that he's doing in terms of tariffs. Let's take a look.
And it is a rational plan. It is a well thought out plan. For me, it is a terrible plan in the sense that it works against the interests of the majority of Americans and against the interests of the majority of humanity. But we need to understand it before we fight it. And the liberal establishment are like headless chickens running around in the hope that somehow Trump is going to fail as a result of not having a plan. He's not going to have to fail because he doesn't have a plan. If he fails, he will fail because there will be people and movements that oppose him who understand his plan. So I just wanted to make this clear.
No, it's important. It's an important caveat. Yeah.
Okay. So what is the plan? To begin with, to understand his plan, we have to understand his main gripe, his main discontent regarding the state of the United States. The vast majority of people around the world, and that includes me, we believe that, and I think we're not wrong to believe, that the United States has an exorbitant privilege, and that is the US dollar.
The US dollar and the US markets, okay? America is an incredibly wealthy nation, and that's why even the poorest Americans, in comparison to like middle class people in Europe, for example, are still, when compared on the global marketplace, have a lot more purchasing power, right? Like that's why sometimes people will say stuff like, "Oh, well, you know, Alabama's like a wealthier than England," right? Like people say stuff like that all the time. Now, and that's true. There's truth to that. Credit card debt is not purchasing power. Yes, it is. You're wrong. It quite literally is if you are someone who's selling goods in the American marketplace. It doesn't matter if it's being purchased with credit card debt. What matters is the money that you're getting. That's it. That's literally, like, I understand where you're coming from because that is precisely the reason why, if you simply look at GDP and if you simply look at purchasing power, you kind of fail to recognize that, like, Americans on average have a way worse quality of life than Europeans on average do, because European states at least like create a comfortable barrier of security and offer some social safety nets that Americans do not have, and that they have to purchase in the private marketplace. This also then feeds back into the GDP, ironically enough. But in terms of selling goods into the American market, in terms of selling goods to the Americans, it doesn't matter if they're buying it with credit card debt or not. If you're a manufacturer of goods and you want to enter the American marketplace, you don't care if they're buying it with credit card debt. You don't care if they're buying it with predatory loans. Okay, you just care about them buying your goods.
Because when you hoard these dollars, right, then the value of the dollar vis-a-vis your own currency goes up, and the competitiveness of your export sector is enhanced. And therefore, Trump says, you see, the foreigners are taking advantage of us. We are gifting them the reserve currency, which keeps their currencies down and keeps their currencies backstopped. Instead of holding gold or whatever, diamonds, they're holding our dollars. And in so doing, they are disadvantaging our exporters, and they're advantaging their exporters who are importing into the United States. And
this is why he's mad at Japan. I mean, this is why America historically tanked. This is initially why America tanked the Japanese economy as well, which is like how in the 90s Japan turned into a multiple decade of I mean, still to this day has experienced stagnation, because if it's super cheap to make goods in Japan and then sell it to the American marketplace, also super cheap, then obviously it's just something that It's something that America is not going to be fond of. If the U.S. dollar is strong, exporting goods out of USA is hard because importing country needs to buy strong, i.e. expensive USD. Does China do this as well? Stockpile U.S. dollars? Of course. Every country does. And yes, China does as well.
Here comes the story about the tariffs. Now, conventionally, liberal establishment economists think that Trump is an idiot because he can't see that tariffs can't work to eliminate the US trade deficit. Their view is, and this is not wrong, where they are wrong is they think that Trump doesn't understand it. He doesn't understand it. What the story is that, yes, you slap tariffs on Chinese aluminum or Chinese plastics or Chinese clothes, right? But that will increase the price that American consumers have to pay, and that will jeopardize America's economy because it will push inflation up. But that at some point is not going to eliminate the trade deficit because as this happens, the dollar will go up. And as the dollar goes up, in the end, American consumers will not be paying more because even though they will have to pay the tariff, the dollar value will have gone up. So what they pay in Walmart is not going to be greater. Now, Trump knows that entirely. I've read policy papers that are circulating amongst his team, and they know this precisely, and they love it. You know why? Because that's...
No way Trump understands all that. No, it's not Trump that understands it. It's, guys, just like Joe Biden didn't run the American government unilaterally, Donald Trump is not running the American government unilaterally. He has a bunch of people around him that are telling him to make these decisions because they are setting what they perceive is going to be the future of the American economy. That's it. You think Donald Trump makes these decisions on his own? Of course not. Like, that's why Project 2025, I don't know what that is, when he was saying stuff like that, it was always ridiculous. Of course, he gets all of his notes from the Heritage Foundation and the American Enterprise Institute. Yes. And it's not just Elon Musk. There's an eclectic group of people that have similar goals and similar interests, which is like advancing the interests of capital and undermining the administrative state. And some of them might be at odds with one another in terms of like how America should do trade in the future. And that's a pretty significant disagreement. But ultimately, right now, as it stands, all of these guys are just holding on. They recognize that America is dying. It's a dying empire, and they want to pick apart the scraps. They're not necessarily known for long-term thinking and stability. Capital owners don't really think in decades. They think in quarters. They think in quarterly earnings reports, which is precisely the reason why they're like, all right, well, if America's dying, we might as well, pick the corpse apart for scraps while that is happening. Republicans making the money they didn't make in 4 years that they weren't inside the White House through insider trading? Not necessarily that either.
How they will get foreigners to pay for the tariffs? Because if, here it is something that they state explicitly in their policy papers. We slap tariffs on them. Their central banks will immediately reduce their interest rates to absorb the recessionary shock to their own economies from our tariffs. As they reduce interest rates, their currency is going to go down, the dollar will go up. In the end, the import prices, the prices that Americans pay will not have changed much, but something will have changed. The trade deficit will not be eliminated, but one thing will have changed. The foreigners will be paying us money they will be paying for the tariffs. And that for the US administration, for the Trump administration is great. Not only will they be collecting the tariff money, but remember, Congress, and particularly the House of Reps, has the purse strings for tax receipts, but not for tariff receipts. To increase the amount of money that the US government gets from the American taxpayer, Trump has to convince Congress. And there he has a very thin majority, and there is just bedlam. He really doesn't want to have to negotiate with Congress.
I thought the prices were supposed to go up. Is that not true? No, I think it will. I mean, that is in the short term, I think the prices will go up. Having said that, however, this is this is Yanis Varoufakis trying to say that there is a reason for why Donald Trump's administration, like he's trying to figure out what could possibly be the logical reason. And it's one of the only explanations that I've heard thus far that at least like have some semblance of logic associated with it, that there is a reason for why he's doing this. And that is that he considers the power that the American dollar has a major issue with American manufacturing. And there's obviously truth to that as well. And that if he, by way of implementing these tariffs, he wants to force other countries to make their goods more expensive so that the American manufacturing comes back and other countries actually buy from the United States of America. But in the short term, this will absolutely harm the American economy as it stands. Yeah, Giannis is right. When you slap tariffs on countries will reduce their interest rates to protect their industry, so their currencies will go down against the dollar. Hence, the tariffs costs will be absorbed by those countries instead of the U.S. and prices won't go up. Maybe. I do not understand is that for that to work, factories and offices have to build first in the U.S. for this, and not only tax incentives have to be created, but bank loan and bank advantages have to be implemented. I think you're not fully understanding him. The price of the dollar goes up on the global market in the end, making foreign goods cheaper in the end while still getting tariff money. I do not foresee the price of goods immediately coming down or even staying relatively stable and then maybe in the long term creating a big boon in manufacturing, especially because in the short term, this will literally lead to layoffs, like mass layoffs in general. The chatter is wrong. When the US dollar increases in value, that means our exports are going to go up in price and the trade deficit will not close. The US also relies on non-substitutable goods abroad. Yeah, if you have, like, when it comes to raw materials, like, there is no substitute. What are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? If we just don't have it here, what are you supposed to do? He's not doing any carve-outs whatsoever. Maybe he will down the line, and I don't understand it. Or maybe he's signaling that he might do that, but he hasn't said anything about it. It just, like, doesn't make sense. Commerce Secretary Lutnick, Trump may roll back Canada and Mexico I'm done. What are we doing here? Why am I doing this? What the hell is going on? What a goddamn clown show. Okay, I'm done. I'm officially placing Trump in the unique position that I've only placed one other global leader on. The Vladimir Putin insanity position, okay? That's it. Officially, I'm done looking for reason behind his actions. I'm lying. I will always still try to find a logical reason why he's doing the things that he's doing, even if I disagree with it. But goddamn,